You know, in the last video we talked a little bit about terms. We're going to continue that in this video. I mentioned at the end of the last video we were talking a little bit about amortization. Amortization, if you were to look at a graph here like this, and this is month 1 and this is month 360 on a 30-year loan, over time your loan balance decreases if, well, put the 360 over here, best laid plans. Over time, your loan balance decreases on an amortized loan. So if a loan is fully amortized at the end of 360 months, you can see that the balance is 0. If we started up here, say at 100,000, this is now 0. On the other hand, and this is where I want you to differentiate between the two, it's also called interest-only loans. So now we've got a fully amortized loan, and amortization means basically you're taking the loan to its death, amortized to the death. On an interest-only loan, instead of the principal balance declining over time, the principal balance would stay the same. So an interest-only loan is not going to look like that. An interest-only loan, if you borrowed $100,000, at the end of 30 years, you would still owe $100,000. In other words, during that 30-year period, all you're doing is you're paying the interest. Okay? So write that down, if you would. There are two types of loans out there that you're going to find when you're looking at paper. One is fully amortized, and the other one is interest only. Now you may find a third type, and that involves a balloon payment. And all a balloon payment is it's a lump sum that's due at some point in the future. So for instance, if Roland borrows money from Countrywide and Countrywide sticks a balloon in it, he might have to pay his loan off in 5 years. It might be amortized over 30 years, but he might have to pay it off in 5 years. Okay, that's a balloon payment. We'll talk a little bit more about balloons later. Now, moving on, let's go back to the note. We've talked about a note and deed of trust, but there's also players. And the reason it's important that you know who the players are is I'm going to task you later on in this series how to go out and find notes. But the way that notes are recorded, and by the way, at the county courthouse where the transaction occurs, the note is not recorded, but the deed of trust is. So the lien against the property is recorded, and I'm going to show you how to find all these notes. But you got to find it by players. Now, there's two sets of players, actually 3 in some cases. There's the person who's making the payments, in this case Roland is making the payments, and there's a person receiving the payments. Okay? So a person making the payments is a payor. I'm just going to put ER. And the person receiving the payments, obviously, is the payee. Okay, well, that's great, but there's also other terms that are used. For instance, in a mortgage state, the payer is also referred to as the mortgagor. And the person receiving the payment would be the mortgagee. So in a mortgage state, Countrywide would be the mortgagee because they're receiving payments. Roland, who's making the payments, would be the mortgagor. Okay, now, so that's in the mortgage state. So we've got mortgagor versus mortgagee. And I'll just put the EE here because I want to move faster than it takes me to write. Last, in a deed of trust state, we've got a person making the payments and a person receiving the payments. And we've got somebody else here. In a deed of trust state, the person making the payments is a trustor. So again, you go back to the OR or ER, so you've got a trustor here, but the trustor does not pay the trustee, the trustor pays the beneficiary. Okay? So in a deed of trust state, we've got beneficiary versus trustee. Now, the reason that's important is later on in this series when I show you how to go to the county recorder's office and look up notes, and research it and be able to buy them or broker them out or buy them for your own portfolio, it's important because they're filed by the person who's receiving the payments. So you're not going to look for the payer or the mortgagor or the trustor. You are, however, going to look for the payee, the mortgagee, or the beneficiary. All right, those are the players, ORs or E's, and you're going to look always for the person who's receiving the payments. Now let me just refer over here just for a minute here. Let's cut it after payments. Just cut it right after payments.